Hello, my name is Deyev. I'm CEO and co-founder at Stobox, and today we have a very special guest. It's actually the first time when we are hosting an event that we're meeting someone. And this is the first time when we have a special guest today, and his name is Ross.
Ross Shemeliak, co-founder and CEO at Stobox, tokenization expert, RWA believer, STO analyst, investor, and advisor since 2016.
And we have a lot of questions to answer, and I've invited Ross to speak about his story, himself, about how he sees vision of tokenization, what he does in Stobox, and basically as good friends we would like to have a chat on this day. So Ross, what's up?
Thank you, Gene. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to share some market insight, my thoughts on real-world assets on tokenization. So I'm Ross Shem. I'm the co-founder and chief operations officer at Stobox. And my journey in technology and in IT started when I was just 14 years old. And I started researching and following all of the websites that it related to their technologies, new products, gadgets. And that's how I, by the way, founded the Bitcoin and blockchain and started my crypto journey, because I'm following the crypto since 2016. And that's how I'm engaged in this industry and become their investor, advisor, researcher, analyst, etc. And my personal background started from the financial industry, traditional financial industry, where firstly I was engaged as in a sales team. Then I was engaged in different positions, starting from the technical analysis, as a team lead in the company, as a desk manager, and I following their technology and financial industry since 2017, and I'm very deep in this industry, traditional industry, and that's how I found Stobox and joined Stobox to scale what we are doing and to make the great things happen. And I'm very great to be here and ready to have a fun and to rock the party.
Yeah, thanks, man. I just want to say, when you say join Stobox, is basically I was there by myself, right? So I was, it was back in 2017. I was on some Asian trip, and we were figuring out how blockchains can be implemented in within the STO, right? Security tokens and security token offerings. Now it's all RWAs, as we all know. So Ross is with Stobox from the very, very beginning. And moreover, you said you started your crypto journey back in 2016,
Exactly.
Which is apparently 3 years after the first block of, 5 years after the first block of Bitcoin. I mean, you were one of the first. What was the price of BTC when you entered the crypto?
4,000.
4,000, okay. Good. That's amazing. That's amazing how the industry changes within the time, and how much things that we did and accomplished within Stobox for the last 5
Exactly,
years.
and it is a great topic because the industry itself started as a tokenization, right? As a STO, security token offering.
Yep.
But what we currently see that their most popular abbreviation, it is RWA, real world assets. But the industry itself started from tokenization and from the STO, security token offering. And it is very interesting how the industry evolves.
Absolutely, and still many people think that tokenized things or tokenized equity or tokenized assets are just assets, whereas in many cases they are being transformed into securities. And this is actually a very interesting point about the misconceptions. And by the way, we have a list of questions, guys, that we would like to ask, right, Ross? We would like to discuss with him. There will be a number of questions, so let's start with the first one, and we will be happy explaining in depth the fundamentals behind these questions. So let's start with the first one. I think it's a very interesting and a very conceptual part of what we do is tokenization and AI. Okay, tokenization and AI. What brings them together? To your point of view, how that two things merge?
Thank you for the great question, by the way. And I see that currently we see big traction in AI tools like ChatGPT, etc. And by having these tools, now people and general public have the opportunity to research and to learn more about the tokenization and about the nuances, right? So I see now that tokenization industry merged with AI from the angle of view that tokenization it is very complex industry where you have all of the legal nuances, where to incorporate the company, how to structure your business, what documentation you need, for example, offering memorandum, etc. But with ChatGPT, ChatGPT reduced the threshold to this information. So what I'm trying to say, that their consulting and some services, they becoming as a commodity, right? And by AI, businessmen now more educated when they want and when they researching about tokenization to enter this business. So I see the fusion with AI and tokenization, where we see the evolving on some tools that assist businessmen to learn more about tokenization through the AI. So not through the real physical manager, right, sales manager, but introducing the AI where you able to learn more about some peculiarities, legal points, etc. And as I know that guys from the Tokenizer and the Tokenized, they already created legal AI bot that assists businessmen to receive this type of information. And I think that in upcoming future, right, we will see more and more traction and more tools that will follow tokenization and bring on the table for the businessman their exact information steps, what he need to do then to enter their technical platforms to physically tokenize the assets.
I absolutely agree with you. I think the AI will bring down the barriers, at least educational barriers, into this tokenization. But there's another very important aspect of this. Unlike traditional fiat money, crypto is built with the use of smart contracts, saying that the calling of specific functions, right, where the money can be minted, burned, transformed, and whatsoever, they can be triggered by the smart contracts. Now, we as human beings interact with the smart contracts, or actually make them, you can automate a lot of things. And now we use them to kind of manually, we use the crypto, right? We send money to each other and so on. But at some point, these decisions can be made and will be made by AI, which means that the financial system, right? How assets, tokenized assets are distributed, the decision of that, or the flow and the process, given the fact that they'll be built on the smart contracts, now can be governed by the AI. How do you think how that future clicks in your mind? And
it is great insight that once the ChatGPT or any other AI tool will allow to integrate with API, right? For example, API with some blockchain explorers or smart contracts, you will interact not manually with MetaMask or with smart contract directly, but you will interact with the AI tool, right? By asking in a voice messages or text messages, and manage your digital assets through their AI. And it is a great insight. So I fully agree with you that it's like transform the industry and transform the interaction as a human being. Because before we had like different types of interaction. When their computer mouse was founded, right, it has completely changed our mind. When their Steve Jobs presented the iPhone, where you can click in the sensor and interact with your hand, with your iPhones, it has completely changed our environment. So with AI, with blockchain, I think it could be the next step of the evolution.
Would you try AI? would you allow AI assistant to govern your savings?
I think no, not on this stage.
Not at this stage.
Yes.
Because I think where eventually where it goes, because a lot of people have financial education, and it's always the issue of the trust, right? So you give money, but you have them in the different banking solutions, in the different brokerage, you invest, right? So you have that trust to human beings, to people, to companies that actually build trust, and you invest money into funds or whatever. And the decision is made by the human being. And we're still, okay, we know that the AI is coming. So at one point we will, instead of giving money to, Berkshire or whatever, BlackRock, we would give money to AI to manage your assets. And we have an enormous buying power, selling pressure, given the AI. And that's interesting.
And it is a very important point and very important topic that you mentioned. I mean, the combination of AI, blockchain, and extremely important security. Because now with AI, you can create a deep fake, and we see many cases where some financial system were hacked through the AI and deep fake. So what I'm trying to say that all the financial industry, including the tokenization, need to reinsure and create a new processes of onboarding and verification, right? Authentication to ensure that all of their funds will be safe, because currently you can create a deep fake and hack their human being, right, on a video call or some financial systems, and it is very critical, I think, for any private individual, because everyone manage their funds, right, and have something.
No, definitely. I think that, people who are watching us, I just want to, to share, the feeling that what we were talking about, right? So we are working on the RWA domain, Ross, myself, building the tokenization products, services, pipelines, documentaries, in a form that we actually build the whole process up, how it. And we're now talking about the AI management of the smart contracts to assets, right, of the multi-billion potential tokenized assets that we or our partners from the different tokenized companies, like there's a number of them, they'll be tackling. So I'm sure that we are part of our journey at some time, one way or another.
Definitely.
Great. Look, man, let's continue. And we have a second question here from our community. By the way, it was asked, and it's very critical that we actually make a pause and distinguish. And the question is, it's not even a question, it's the narrative. RWA, right? So we have real world assets, and people, use that 3 letters, use that acronym to actually push everything they know. They have T-bills, they have public securities, they have private equity, they have stable coins, they have utility tokens from the companies that doing tokenization and so on. And very few have an understanding of the classes and how they're different and what they're in common. What is that for you? How you distinguish these types of RWAs, and what do you think are not maybe RWAs, and how it's for yourself, for you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And to be honest, because I'm following the industry, have been following the industry from the beginning, right? It is the point when I'm becoming very angry, extremely angry, because what I currently see, you're completely right, that for the general public, RWA, it is everything, right? And just a few weeks ago, I came back from the Paris Blockchain Summit, where, by the way, Stobox was nominated as a best regulatory innovation of the year. And I checked a different booths and exhibitions of a different providers that are engaged in tokenization, where I see the RWA and tokenization, and I started the conversation, and I understand that they have no idea where they are. They have no idea what tokenization is. They have no idea that it is even regulated, extremely regulated, and it is very funny. So you're completely right that currently under the abbreviation RWA, you maybe will see and research a lot of companies that trying to just join the trend, but are not associated with some real business, real assets, or some kind of traction. So each time you need to do your research, right, and to navigate and make sure that the company with whom you engage in, co-investing, doing the best, right, in this industry. And for me, I'm dividing it to their T-bills, right, tokenization of their real companies, I mean real public companies, for example, Apple, Microsoft, and it is simple process, it is easy peasy process where you're tokenizing as the existing shares and providing them, for example, for African region that is completely unbanked, right? Where you through the blockchain have a possibility to invest in some stocks on a blockchain, but not opening some brokerage account.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt you by saying that what you call an easy peasy, it's a very complex process for the 99% of people, because you know the technology behind it, and we know there's a great companies like Ondo Finance that already do tokenization. We see, a lot of things moving from CeFi into DeFi. We're going to speak on this. But yeah,
I'm calling it easy peasy because for me it is completely boring. It is, I will be honest, it is boring for me because it is easy, right? You have some existing public company, for example, Apple, right? And you're tokenizing it, but it is already liquid, already traded, right? In Stobox, for example, we're focusing on their private companies, in the real businesses, restaurants, real estate, that want to raise money to scale up business operations or create a new asset, new real estate, open a new bar, right? And creating some real value, and we're bringing liquidity on it. And of course, this super complex process. That's why, for me, tokenization of T-bills, some US treasuries, or public companies, it is easy peasy and boring because I don't see so much value here. Of course, for the African region that is unbanked, it is some kind of value, and it is very important for the evolving of the industry, for the traction. But as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, I'm trying to focus on something big where we can put our energy, right, and change it, right? Because we started this business 5 years ago, and it was long time ago, and we're trying to bring real value to the real industries, real businesses, that for them, tokenization, it is not just to bring the unbanked people, it is their change, the mind changer of their whole life, because previously they don't have this opportunity, and now they will have their community-driven businesses, investors, full online, and for them it is game changer, right? For the Apple, who are already traded, it is not a game changer to be tokenized. They are already traded on NASDAQ, you understand? But the real value comes from their common people, right, that you can meet on that street.
Now, definitely tokenization opens up new business models, which are critical for SMEs, for small and average businesses, for the people who are just fundraising or playing with the with tokens and with the different business models. But let me just kind of recap and share this with everyone. So we have that enormous asset class of public securities that are traded on traditional stock exchanges like London Stock Exchange and New York Stock Exchange. And even though we call them public companies, there's still the access to these companies are limited because of the CeFi, because even though they can be offered and traded through Revolut or whatever, there's still limitations. So imagine the impact, the DeFi impact for companies like Apple. They'll be borderless. They'll be borderless, and that's absolutely amazing, because even though you call it boring, and I partially agree with you, what amazes me is that the public companies may become global companies, not only from the service and product perspective, because Apple is a global company product-wise, but now they'll be a global company asset-wise. And because they're unlocking the DeFi, and this shares will answer the different blockchains, and at the end of the day will be to unbanked people somewhere in rural areas. That's amazing. And again, that's one part. The second part is what you're mentioning that Stobox does. We perfectly know this. This is a private businesses. So, and this is where the main interest comes from, because more than 95, I don't remember the stats, but there's a lot of, like 95% of the global equity is in private business.
99
Private,
companies are private.
yeah, private businesses which don't have that liquidity, which have enormous upside potential depending on the regions. For example, a bar in Malta would be, a double-digit revenue, in year on year, whereas my banking deposit, whatever, in Switzerland would be a negative. So I will be able to invest in the private businesses around the world, and tokenization will actually definitely be not a compliment, but a warrior to the traditional banks, because why would I give my money to the bank to manage if I have a lot of decent projects and products and companies around the world in real estate, in servicing sector, in financial sector, and I have liquidity, I have the power to, that's my money. I use the DeFi to enter this market. I use the DeFi to exit this market. So this is where all the business would emerge. What do you think?
Only in case when bank will become DeFi.
Yes, that's.
For example, as a Signum in Switzerland, so they providing the services of custody, of tokenization, of storing digital assets, introducing to the DeFi. So we see, I'm completely agree with you that in this case, of course, you don't need a bank. So to survive, they need to follow crypto, they need to follow the agenda, and we see it with the Bitcoin ETF, Ethereum ETF that we will talk later, but it is some kind of their flags, right? The sign that we see that common financial institutions following the agenda and joining crypto anyhow.
No, definitely banks will be banks are losing the whole this narrative, and again, not every bank have a sufficient license to manage depositories, right? Especially individual deposits, that might be challenging. And again, you trust with your savings to a third-party institution. And if you look, if you do your own research and look for the recent banks that have been fallen, that have been bankrupt, or they have misled the public, or they've done frauds, and so on, you'll see there's a number of those. Plus we give inflation. There's a lot of risks, whereas the community-driven businesses, people are backing up with their friends and family and, like-minded. So that could be done globally only with the use of tokenization, because it decreases the barriers to entry, it decreases the cost of management, it opens the borders. So yeah, that's definitely a great.
Exactly, and answering a question about their tokenization and real-world assets and how I frame it. So I see like 5 sections, right? The first one, it is the tokenization of the public company that you mentioned. Yeah. The second one, it is tokenization of T-bills. So it is tokenization of US treasuries, for example. The third section that I see, it is tokenization of their private companies, right? The next section will be, in my vision, it is tokenization of some collectibles, for example, Rolex, or for example, art, the tokenization of some items, right? It is not the private companies, it is the item that could be tokenized. And the last one, it is the tokenization of their, it is tokenization of their private securities.
That's another big topic. That's another. You're gonna stay with us, and we will speak on this. With I absolutely agree with you. Again, with the real estate tokenization, there's a different ways how it can be tokenized. That's another subject. Yeah, when you say goods and collectibles, I wish I could tokenize my Pokemon cards. Yeah, man. There's a third question. There's a third question that we have, third topic. And look, given the fact that we're already kind of fluent in assets that have been tokenized, and we look how different. I mean, you've been in Paris recently, where we've been granted the Stobox has been granted the tokenization. What was that? What was that award?
We were nominated as the best regulatory innovation of the year.
Yeah, best regulatory innovation. Of course, having that said, you know how to differentiate, I don't want to say scam RWAs, but definitely we see more emphasis on the legalities and the legal structuring of RWAs. What's your opinion? Like, what do you see? How much? Because I remember 2017 when there was ICOs, and they say, what is the legality behind this? And people say, okay, just don't ask that questions, right? It's a pure token. It does the best of the best. It goes to the moon, and so on. But now we're talking about U.S. Congress. We're talking about the different regulators imposing different standards, and there's more legalities. So how does that work in your head?
Great question. So what I currently see, right, from the request that I'm receiving, that now businessmen are more educated on some legal peculiarities and nuances, and now understand that it's necessary to conduct security token offering, utilizing and using some legal frameworks, right, to be on the side of regulation. Because previously you're completely right, with the ICOs or some kind of their token offerings, it was like anarchism, right? Without any legal documents, without the papers. And now, with the market adoption of the BlackRock that issued the tokenized shares, the adoption of their global industry, where you see more and more cases and regulatory approvals on their tokenization of some kind of assets, of course, the mindset of the people evolves, and now general public understand that it is extremely important and necessary to follow their securities laws when we talk about the security tokens, right? And to have some solid legal advices, legal constructions, legal cases, legal documentation to follow the regulation. With a Binance case, for example, where in the mind of general public it transformed that it is super necessary to hold the license if you trade crypto, to hold, of course, the license if you trade security tokens, etc. And with this global market agenda, now what I see, as I mentioned, based on the requests and based on the information, that now businessmen are more educated, and it is a very positive sign. It means that they're spending time following something, right? Why? Because they see some gain, some opportunities to join, right, and to benefit from it. And when more and more people will join the tokenization, we will see extremely different results and extremely different movements in this industry. And these movements are already started with the BlackRock, with their self-securitize that spoke to Congress just a few days before, right? Yep. So it is like a benchmarks and some green flags that we see that industry evolves itself. So yes, their legal nuances are extremely important now, not only in security tokens, but in general in crypto, right? If you exchange, you need to have a license. Before 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, there are zones of exchange that were acting without any papers, any licenses, without any legal entity, yeah. Right? But now it cannot be.
I think that the risk to reward ratio is very important, and when we say it should be legal, I think it's not only has to be breached with the regulations, but it has to be open and disclosed to investors, because that protects investor rights. And obviously, that having said, that gives it boosts the investor confidence. So if you're not just baiting for the blockchain as it was back in 2017 or 18, where anything on the blockchain was just a super deal, like it was in bubble of .coms back in 2000s. Now we don't see this anymore, which is great, which shows the level of maturity of the industry. It shows that, okay, we have meme tokens, right? We have something that people are just love to play with, but that's okay. That's just a part of the crypto, and don't put everything together. As we say, don't put all the RWAs, don't put all the assets into RWAs and try to distinguish that there's a specific assets. And the same with the digital assets themselves. Okay, we have meme tokens that may, surge 500,000% meanwhile we speak, and then dump in the next second. But obviously there's a lot of risk. And if you are a decent investor, you would look at this as as a play money, right? It's kind of difficult to build your future prosperity on the meme token regardless, unless you do it and create it, but there's only few do so. On the other hand, if the business discloses their business plan, their roadmaps, their challenges, their strength. So basically that's a considerable business. And we're not only talking just about the startups, where this business model may be not tested or unverified, where you have a lot of risk. Even though the team may be perfect and everything may look perfect, but we do know that 95% of the startups, they fail. So you're not going to play on the VC side and actually take these risks and put all your eggs in one basket with that type of risk. But at the same time, when you see tokenized real estate in US, or you see them in Europe, or you see proper businesses that allow you to become that private investor with a double-digit return, that's definitely an opportunity cost. And for that kind of people, the disclosing of risks and the validity of the business is very much important, because they, instead of putting their money in a bank at the very minimum interest, they now looking for trust in you or the companies that do tokenization, and then they give their private money to them expecting some yield, some interest, and that has to be framed, because if something goes wrong, that person, that investor, has to have rights,
of course,
to go to the court or to exercise his rights with respect to the company, which was never there. I mean, it was in a proper business environment, but we're never here on the DeFi.
And you touched a very interesting topic that investors want to see and want to feel and ensure that the company itself, right, and have some legal confirmation that it is a solid project that doing some kind of the offering. And we have such case, it is FTX. So after FTX, people now understand and now feel, of course, I will pass KYC, but I will be protected because I will deal with security tokens. Yes, there bad things are happened, but I will be more protected.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's much more value in RWAs, because that's everything that we have. Like all the world is RWAs. It's a physical assets. But the accounting of those assets will be on the blockchain. I will give you just an example to our viewers and listeners. I was speaking recently to one of the art specialists, and just the fact that instead of just moving art pieces with you, or people migrate, economical migration, the other migration. People move around. They may be living in Bali today and Dubai tomorrow, and in New York day after. And it's very difficult kind of to have all your valuables with you. It's risky, it's valuable. And
Could be damaged.
it could be damaged, could be lost, stolen, and come on, you're flying around with what? With icons and the heritage of the family. Of course not. So what is the way? What is the long-term resolution? And we've chat with him, and where the market, the art market goes, I'm a bit off that story. That's why it amazes me that you just bring that piece into the physical custody, you have the paper, you tokenize the paper, and in the terms of use within the custody, say whoever has that paper has that thing, right? Has it. So, and then you tokenize it and you have it in your wallet, and you can send it, sell it, share it, I don't know, stake it, do whatever. Given the fact that the physical object is stored, insured somewhere in the custody of Hong Kong or Singapore or Malta, doesn't matter, New York. And this is a new art business.
And it is a great example that currently the new spirit of a new generation and new trend, it is to have everything with you in your iPhone, right, or in your pocket. And by having this spirit, I think that we are in the right place, in the right time, with the real world assets agenda, right? Because through the RWA, you can tokenize your real estate, your real business, manage your shareholder list completely online, and interact with your private company completely online on a blockchain with full transparency, and build the community-driven businesses. And what you need to do so, just what is in your bag, your laptop and iPhone. So it is perfectly aligned the spirit of having everything with you, with the real world assets and tokenization and crypto.
I don't want to tease Stobox products at this point, but the Stobox 4, I don't want to say that's even anticipated. That's still kind of something at the back of our development team, and there's a perfect team working on this, and I'm so enthusiastic, and I'm so keen in looking how we could bring the adoption with the Stobox 4, given the fact that we will allow public securities to be tokenized, art pieces, music. I mean, there's a lot of things. I believe that everything or anything can be, almost anything can be tokenized. What do you think? Like, what is the most absurd case, or what is like kind of the most crazy case that you would think of?
Now or in the future?
In the future. Like, what are you going to tokenize? Energy? What are you going to say?
Tokenized a wind.
A wind. Time. We would tokenize time. Ladies and gentlemen, we would tokenize time, and we already have that in our agenda.
Exactly. This is what I touched with the personal securities in my
that's exactly.
fifth section.
That's I don't remember which question is this, but let's cover this question and then move off to another one. Personal security. So look, you basically, what you say is that a person is a professional, and throughout his journey, lifetime journey, the value of that professionalism only increases because of the additional education that the person gets throughout the life. So I would suggest that the value of an hour of a person, if I would say, let's tokenize time in a form of hours, let's use this kind of instrument to evaluate and validate the person, like, how much time he can devote, he tokenize. And we say, okay, let's tokenize 1,000 hours. A healthy human being can tokenize 100,000 of hours at a price of, whatever. And then throughout the lifetime, presumably this price would increase. That's the first thing. And the second, that would allow young people not to, chain themselves in banking credits or credit lines for education, because I don't know the statistics, but just to, an average person to graduate from a university, Western university, would end up having at least $150,000 in an in debt before they start working. What we're talking about right now is absolutely, mind-blowing with respect to traditional ways of how things kind of were. And now that smart little kid that can be given and awarded and can be given an option to basically to offer his time, professional time, like a lawyer, like an IT person, like a marketer, doesn't matter, to offer this at the price of, I don't know, let's say $10. And $10, just tokenizing 1,000 hours, sometimes $10,000 is a life-changing amount. A person may use this money to relocate, to buy a computer, get us self-educated. Now even Stanford and Harvard are providing courses online for free. So you just need access to electricity, you need water, you need safe environment, and just by offering a time, you could be independent from any financial institutes. You don't have to be in the university or to finish the university in order to be successful. And I think that actually opens a really new world of potential. What do you think, man?
Yes, I completely agree with you that it will completely change the world itself, because currently you have millions of musicians or some artists that want to create something, right, but need to work in restaurants, right, to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And through the tokenization of hours or through the tokenization of private securities, they will allowed to create some kind of value in this world and to be rewarded, right, rewarded and supported by their community or by their crowd of people that will see a value here. So I think it will be a great instrument to completely change completely change the tool itself and completely change the interaction, how you will do so. Because, for example, let's talk about the influencers, right? You have your community, you have everything, and you can tokenize yourself.
Exactly.
You allow them to buy in some proportion the shares of yourself and benefit from all of your activities, because it is already your fans, right? It is already your community that will be with you forever because they love you.
But that's an interesting point. Look, I may be wrong. I don't want to take that, a super legal guy in this room. Definitely not. But what I have in mind is that when you're talking about private securities, you already call them securities. And I don't think there's a lot of jurisdictions that actually have that term, because usually shares are of a company shares. And now what is that private security? So it's a very difficult topic for most of regulators. So you have to create a company like a sole proprietorship, and then you have to give some rights to your equity. That's I saw there's a number of cases, but I still find them very very unique. What I think, and again I may be wrong, but if you would tokenize an hour, and I would tokenize an hour, this is a real RWA. This is not a security. This is a real world asset, time. That's it. There's nothing more real than my time.
I think it is like different angles of this topic, because in some jurisdiction, for example, US, you already have the cases of the paper tokenized securities in paper, right, of some founders and businessmen. So in Silicon Valley, it is one of the trends, and we have now also the investment funds that invest not in the companies and invest in personality. Because why you would invest in some company of the private individual, and if their company is failed, he will create the second one, right? The third one. So why you would invest in a company but not in person itself and benefit from the all activities of this person? Doesn't matter in business and social medias, if you see that this person anyway, anyhow will be successfully, not from the one business but from the second, not from the second but from the third, right? Any day, anyhow, and you believe in it based on your parameters. And we have these cases already in US. For example, very interesting topic, there are players that play basketball in universities, right? You have their biggest industry of the basketball in US, and through some mathematical algorithms, you can invest, for example, in 100 basketball player in university, and with some probability, some of this person will become their official player of their premier basketball league in US, and you will benefit from it. So what I'm trying to say, that there are different investment funds and different tools and methodology how you can find those peoples and invest not in the business but in personal itself.
And that's definitely so. Look, guys, you know, my lovely bank. That's it, my depository account. You know, some people invest into the public companies, like they have their shares in Tesla, in Nvidia, and in Microsoft, which is great. I have nothing against this. Perfect. People made millions and make millions, and you know that's a kind of long-term growth. But it's not for everyone, and there's certain limitations. And then you have the private businesses that are being locked because of the perfect knowledge. You don't know what kind of private businesses are offered in Kenya. You don't know, no idea about the Brazil. You know, no idea about the opportunities in South Africa. So tokenization would actually expose this and put it kind of openly to you, and you would make your own decision. Like, I would invest into that Kenyan project or in US real estate. But now we make a step further and say, okay, that's good, but that's a derivative of human actions, of human thought, right? So that's perfect. That's a cumulative human things and thoughts and how they manage, which is a perfect class. But let's drill down to that specific human being. It's because of him, and I want now invest into him directly. So, exactly. And now you unlock the investments into the human beings themselves. So what do you have in portfolio? You know, I have Michael Jordan in my portfolio, I have Mike Tyson in my portfolio. I have, I don't know, a lot of people in my portfolio. That sounds crazy. That sounds crazy.
New Pokemon.
Again, new Pokemons. Okay, thank you for watching us. Thank you, Ross. Let's continue. And the next question is, look, man, the tokenization is new to everyone. How do you think? How can we bring the adoption to the industry? Via what tools? Like, what are the activities behind them? To your opinion, what are they?
I think that it is extremely important. It is the education on tokenization and real-world assets. And in Stobox, by the way, we posted and recorded the first video that we published on our YouTube channel that is currently the biggest in the world under the topic of tokenization more than 3 years ago. And now we have more than 200 videos and more than 1 million views. So the education, it is extremely important during this trend of real-world assets to provide for their common investors and common businessmen instruments and material to research and to understand what tokenization is. So now we see that a lot of their service and technical providers started its own educational courses, for example, Tokeny conducting the webinars, DigiShares conducting the webinars, and we are in Stobox one of the first organizations that were introduced in tokenization and started sharing our perfect knowledge of RWAs through our YouTube channel, through their professional content in their medias, right? Their professional content in the blog that is followed by the founders and created by the founders, right? So during all the road of Stobox, the education played their crucial role. And for us, it is very important to share our vision, to share our professional knowledge. And we up to now conducted in our company more than 100,000 of hours of research of different nuances. And we are very happy to share it for free, to share it during the RWA Media that we are launching, right? To provide the tool where you can get their information in one place, from the news, from the analytical reviews, from their service and their platform providers, technical providers. So you will be able to have everything in place and follow the tokenization topic and educate yourself to understand how to make research of the companies, how to detect the scams, how to differentiate the scams and real companies. That's why we created the Real World Assets Media, RWA Media, right? To digest about tokenization, to broadcast and to share our professional knowledge in this topic.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree that the education is the master tool for the industry to adopt. Another point that I also see here is, look, first of all, I'm a very happy person because I don't work, I enjoy, right? But not very people enjoy the combination of crypto, finance, regulations, and given the fact there's always a pressure, right? So we work under pressure, and there's a lot of information that we have to, comprehend in order to build the success story. And we are inside the boat and we know what we're doing and we devote our lives, right, to this. And we're kind of very professionally looking at this. But this is our job. Whereas people outside who would like to tokenize, they're not the part of this journey, right? They want the results of this journey, not all the insights of it. So if yesterday it was kind of simple, right? He was an IT guy. Okay, who is the IT guy in this room? Okay, that one. Okay, there's a gig in the glasses, so we're doing something. Okay, that's an IT guy. Who is responsible for finance? Okay, that's the accountant or CPA, that does. Now, these two figures, they just combined. Because if you want to play on the tokenization field at the moment, you have to be aware of what DeFi is, right? It would be difficult for you to tackle this if you don't have a MetaMask installed. You've never bought a Bitcoin, if you don't have a USDT, and you just want, okay, I gotta do tokenization. Look, guys, that's a bit optimistic, right? So you have to have your base knowledge of crypto. You have to have a base knowledge of finance, because from a private company perspective, okay, before it was just you and your friends and your family, and you were kind of scribble the documents and showing them that it's a crazy idea, you're gonna be multi-billionaires, and you try to sell your idea to people inside your small room, and nobody wants to tell you the truth, that it's absolutely out of your mind, but because they trust you, they love you. But now with that piece of paper, you're just exposed to outside world, and you expect people to to buy it. No, it's not gonna happen. So you have to be professional in presentation, you have to be professional in business wrapping, you have to be professional in marketing. If you can't sell from your heart, by sell I mean share your vision and why my story gonna be successful, it's gonna difficult to engage other people. Besides that fact, you have to learn about crypto and at least navigate, and so. So when people want to tokenize and say, I want to tokenize, I just want to say that it's a very insightful journey, but it's
Definitely.
it's a very time consuming, not educational consuming. It's energy. You have to, by putting on this, by stepping on this path, you just can't have an easy ride. You don't give the keys and say, voila, no, I'm gonna ride. No, you're gonna walk your talk, right? You go straight from I know that there's a different steps in tokenization. And it's very critical that clients, go through these steps, and they get more mature from, day to day through the education. And this is very right, like Tokeny and DigiShares and now
It is great.
Stobox. Yeah, now Stobox. We're now launching an academy. We still have thoughts where exactly to lend it. We have a number of potential jurisdictions where to lend it. But the key is to share the knowledge.
And we see the extremely interest to their educational courses and to education itself by Stobox, and it is a positive signs. And my vision is that it is great that DigiShares, Tokeny, Securitize, anyhow launching some kind of educational series, because what I believe, it is not about the competition, it is about their collaboration.
Absolutely.
So we contributing to the industry, we help to educate businessmen that will be together with us, right? So it is our mission of Stobox, to share our knowledge, to share our insight, to educate businessmen, to educate investors, and to bring real value for the real companies with tokenization of the real world assets.
No, I definitely agree, and I'm also very happy that we are in this tremendous newborn industry with very decent long-term companies. I see names again like Tokeny and DigiShares and Securitize for a number of years, and everybody walks their own way, their own path, explores the world of tokenization through their lenses. But we see the results, and we see the level of the results and the scale of that transformation that is brought by these results. And I think and I feel that whatever has been done to this point is just basically to have this point in time now. This industry is being started. Can you share how is that narrative goes with you? Like, how do you see the institutional adoption that we see now?
First of all, BlackRock joined the tokenization, and now we're actively pushing the agenda. And for me, this is logical because there 99% from all of the companies around the world are private. You have more than $20 trillion in the world that could be tokenized, and of course, such organization as BlackRock want to take a piece of the cake, right? And pushing their own agenda that is benefit all of their RWA contributors, including Stobox. So what I see, the fact that Mr. Carlos Domingo was yesterday speaking about the RWA agenda to the US government, shows that their adoption is here, right? And with their approval of Bitcoin ETF, we see zones of professional organization that joined the crypto industry and complementary the real world assets, right? Because now all of the institutions, all of the financial instruments itself moving to the blockchain, and RWA, it is the securities or shares on a blockchain. Together with Bitcoin ETF approval, it's complementary, directly positive impact the tokenization itself, because it's logical continuation of the process. Is crypto, Bitcoin ETF, is real world assets. That's why Mr. Carlos Domingo presented the RWA narratives to the US government to continue the agenda of tokenized equities, tokenized securities, tokenized private capital, tokenization of everything. And I see that it is the next big vehicle, next big trend that will follow for the decades.
Yeah, man, definitely. Let me also give my thoughts to this. With respect to what is being offered and what has to be regulated from US let's say viewpoint, is first of all is the fight between public chains and private chains. I mean, all the banking is built on the private database. And the blockchain is a big database. And when we say private blockchain, it means that there's a special closed database that works as the chain of blocks, but nobody knows what's inside. For example, there's a tools to build private blockchains, like a Hyperledger from IBM. They're doing great. They have a great SDK and great technology for anyone to build that private chain that to be utilized to your own purposes. And on the other hand, and the private blockchains, they are perfectly adjustable. They don't have any gas fees. So that's a typical databases, but in a different form of consensus. Whereas the public chains, they have coins, they have memes, they have NFTs, they have some. You have, in order to send a transaction asset from A to B, you have to buy ETH, or you have to buy Sol, or you have to buy BNB. Like, how is that adjustable to the kind of bigger picture of the institutional world? And it was a debate. Whereas, and again, guys, if you're following this, I'm sure that there's a very few people that are gonna talk this subject live with you. So I'm very happy to share this. And there is a kind of war between the private chain adopters and the public chain adopters. But where is all the innovative strength? Where is the community? Public chains.
Of course.
Public chain. The Ethereum is the driver of the smart contracts evolution. Look what Uniswap does on the EVM public chains. You don't see Uniswap on the private chains. You don't even know what works in the private chain. That's why it's called private. Whereas the public, we see and we follow the evolution of DeFi on the public chains, even though the regulation may not be there and the funds were scared. And now BlackRock, like BlackRock comes and tokenizes their fund on the Ethereum. We say, voila, that's it. And then they go, and then Frankel Templeton goes and say, okay, there's another fund for another 120 or 180 million. Wow, closed.
So it's benchmark.
Closed. It is a benchmark. And actually, I remember it was a dilemma for us. We were looking at the private chains. But if you look at the private chain, you have to know that it's not decentralized, it's centralized. So if you want to store securities on that chain, you have to get a licenses in every single country.
Where you will operate, where you will tokenize any assets.
Of course, because nobody cares that it's a blockchain. It's a closed environment, and you're responsible for this.
Who will contribute and who will audit this?
Exactly. It's a money-consuming mechanism. Just apparently, life doesn't go this way. The evolution goes into the public chains, it's great that we made a stake 3 years ago onto public chains, and it was it was shaking because no big guys were using the public chains, and there's only kind of small initiatives. And then we believed that's coming. We knew, we deliver, we build, and for the last 3 years, we're working on the products around EVM compatibility, which is a public chains. And now once we see the ETF, the Bitcoin ETF approval, I say, okay, now they say it's a digital gold, right? It's a proof of work. 97% of proof of work power is in Bitcoin. The rest 3 is in Doji. There's another proof of work. But okay, there's a proof of work agenda, the Bitcoin. Okay, that's fine. So they're allowing these institutions. But what's next? I thought the ETF of Ethereum would be next. The BlackRock fund was the next. And then the closed round of Carlos Domingo was the next, because the BlackRock was a lead investor in the Securitize after that.
What great time we are following that. At the same time, you can have on your Ethereum wallet memcoin, some NFT collection of your art, and their securities of the BlackRock.
And the securities are amazing times. What type of fusion? It was kind of impossible before. And now what we build, the technology that we build, that we adopt, is basically the same technology BlackRock uses for their own purposes, and Securitize develops, and it's all transparent, so we don't know the people. And this was another issue. Can we ensure compliance and AML on the public chains? I guess the US Senate wasn't so aware as Carlos is, and we all know that whatever can be done on the private chains can be done on the public chains. We do it. You can't do tokenization without the respect to AML or to KYC. So that was another topic. There was also a set of other things that Carlos mentioned, and the benefits of tokenization, the public chain, as I've mentioned, public chain concerns. I mean, and there's a lot of examples. So we see how a business of Securitize actually, along with bigger guys, adapting EVMs and adapting public chains, and it's thanks to them. It's great because we're on the same boat and we're happy for this, and we see that's coming.
So in 2019, it was the right direction to build our product on top of EVM compatible blockchain, because now we see the biggest traction there, right? There are regulatory approvals and some benchmark cases as a BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Web3 is about collaboration. It's like I build a part. There's a ledger, right? It's a public ledger, and I build a part, and Ross builds a part, and I don't need to build the same thing. I just need a compatibility to his, because whatever we do, it resides in the ledger itself, and the person writes this. I mean, writes he's the contract caller. The person does that entry, regardless of the environment where it does it from. So there can be tons of projects, tons of products, Web3, but they're all gonna communicate between your wallet and the public chain.
Great example, and that's why with the evolution of blockchain technologies and some tools and ledgers, especially for tokenized securities, we see the biggest traction in EVM-compatible blockchains. Exactly based on your example. Why? Because more people can contribute. Compatibility, right? Integrations. When you're building your private chain, who will contribute there? The IT team that build it. So it is like limited.
Ross, what is Stobox for?
Stobox 4, it is like our premium product for institutional grade clients. And the great thing that all of this time, all of these 5 years of operations of Stobox, we were working and thinking and seeing what will be the game changer for the industry. And by having our knowledge, by having our traction, by speaking with the clients, speaking with their professional market players, now we are building the Stobox 4 as a product where we will have everything in place. The primary issuance, secondary market, verification, their tokenization of their private companies, public companies, personal securities, tokenization of hours, tokenization of art, collectibles, Rolex, art. So it will be one place with a smooth process of onboarding, either for businesses or for common investors that want to participate in the RWA. And we created the very smooth onboarding process for the investors, combining some kind of technologies with the emails and passwords like in Web 2, and the technologies of Web 3, where you store your own money, your private keys. So we did the perfect match, perfect market fit of the combination of these two types, right? Two different worlds of Web 2 and Web 3 to provide the real smooth process, because each day we're facing the communication with the clients, with the investors. We have more than 60,000 registrants in our products. We have more than 14,000 people who pass KYC. So there is a significant amount of people that utilizing our technologies. And only by having this knowledge, by having this traction, we're building the premium world-class product that will drive and rock the party.
If you're talking about Web3, right, the kind of pure Web3, I will give you like DBank, right, or any DeFi, and you would start using DeFi products with a MetaMask, and that may be challenging for most of the people, first of all. Secondly, from the institutional perspective, that's quite strange and adoptive. And presumably it's just a central database with a number of things called tokens. I mean, I haven't found anything else.
Or some website extensions.
Or some website extensions and so on. With what I know that we do in Stobox 4 is that we bridge these two things together. So you'll have a pure blockchain underneath with a full, not your keys, not your money being, enforced. It's yours and it's stored on your wallet. At the same time, the way how you interact with this is built on in a usual way of 2.0. And that thing is called 2.5.
Exactly.
It's Web 2.5.
I like it.
Yeah, and we use the technology of that's the recent technology by Fireblocks. They've introduced this, if I'm not mistaken, in February this year, April, and we just we were doing on the I don't want to say custodial, we're doing it a bit differently. And when they rolled out the technology of that MPCs, we will check out what an MPC stands for, multi-computer, whatever. But that's the way how your private key is divided into two parts, and one is stored with the Fireblocks and the other is stored on your personal device. And if you want to take them, leave the venue, you have the key is yours, right? But once you operate, they're sharing the key between you and the Fireblocks. And it's a new technology that actually allows to be on the Web3 part, at the same time having a much smooth interface for institutional adoptive.
And also benefit the security of your account.
Definitely.
Because you have only the half of your private keys by your own, right? And if something bad happens, you have like additional layer of protection. Any day you can combine it and withdraw your assets to any addresses, right, that you want. But it is additional layer of protection, and it is great that we're combining these two parts of Web 2 and Web 3 with their next level of security for the account if something goes wrong.
If you invest in real RWA, these assets are restorable. They have to be restorable. So if I invest into your company, for example, and you say, okay, Jin, you're an investor, and this is your receipt, and you give it in a paper form, or you give it in a token form. That's what a security token is. It's the fact of me being a shareholder just by the blockchain, not by paper, right? But I'm your investor. So if I lose my key, if I lose my account, would I be still an investor?
In the RWA, yes, because you're legally protected,
Yeah.
and there are several cases what can go wrong. For example, if unfortunately the person dies, right? What will be the cases to restore the access to the securities by the legal procedures and to take it back?
Good, thank you very much. Thank you. There was a lot of questions and it was an insightful. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks, Ross, for visiting our small studio. I'm sure it's not the last time. I hope our community enjoys. And thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. Stay tuned, stay with us.
Yes, I hope that the listeners get their insights and benefit our conversation. Thank you for the great question. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for having fun. And we are just in the beginning.